We have breaking news from Europe in that the current president of the EU, Viktor Orban, who's also the leader of Hungary, landed in Kiev in an unexpected way because he wanted to talk to the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, many of you may know that there's some history between those two going all the way back to the beginning of the war, part of which we're going to talk about in a minute. But Orban's mission and message today is potentially earth-shaking in that he's said publicly that he's advocating for an immediate ceasefire or something close to that to possibly start negotiations that could end the war. So this could potentially be quite a break for peace. It's probably going to give peace an opportunity that it hasn't had really to this level. One might say all the way back to April of 2022 in Istanbul. So we'll see whether this one gets taken or not. Now, we're going to show you some of the things that are coming out of Ukraine today that were listed just hours ago by Orban. But we're also going to have on today Ted Postol, who was previously scheduled to come on today. We were going to talk about some of the things we had talked about in a previous episode, updated information about what may have happened on the beach at Sevastopol. We're also going to look at some of the things from the U.S. presidential election and what happened with last week's debate between Biden and Trump. And we have Ted to unpack a lot of this stuff. And Ted, really great to have you on this complicated day.
Well, it's very nice to be on. I just like to remind your audience, though, that I'm really a scientist by training, and I think I have some things to say, but I'm really not the kind of expert on these particular political matters as many of your other guests tend to be. So I'll try to be careful and talk within the bounds of my relatively limited knowledge, but not total absence of knowledge.
Don't undersell yourself either, because you are a very intelligent man, and you certainly can weigh in on these issues too, which we're going to see demonstrated here in a minute.
There is certainly a lot happening at this point. There are a lot of moving parts, and they're all pointing towards some kind of possible breakthrough, although we've managed to avoid those breakthroughs in the past, but let's hope for the best.
And for reasons I'll explain here as we go along, I think that there's at least a chance that this one might be different than anything since Istanbul in 2022, and I'll explain why in a minute. But first of all, I want to explain why this is so unusual and noteworthy that Orban has even gone to Kiev and is talking to Zelensky, because there's been a lot of bad blood between the two. And this goes all the way back to the very beginning. Just a couple of weeks into the war, Zelensky was upset because Orban was not giving him the full-throated support that other European leaders were. And he wanted that. And he was given this an interview, and he was referring to a peace memorial in Budapest, in the capital city of Hungary, where there is some. I think it's called the Shoes Memorial or something, where there's a bunch of shoes on a waterfront that's in reference to a lot of the Jewish people who were murdered during the Nazi occupation during the Second World War. And so he's going to refer to a similar thing in a city called Mariupol of Ukraine. And here's what he said in March of 2022.
Взуття в Маріуполі. Там такі ж самі люди. Дорослі, і діти, і дідусі, і бабусі, і їх там тисячі. І цих тисяч вже немає. А ти вагаєшся вводити санкції або ні? Вагаєшся пропускати зброю або ні? Вагаєшся торгувати з Росією або ні? Немає часу вагатися. Час вже вирішувати.
And sure enough, Orban did. He said, yeah, okay, I will make my decision, but it's not going to be one he likes. And then in 2023, he explained why his position is what it is.
Really think there is no chance of Ukraine winning. That's and surely point. They stand very little chance of winning without the aid which you are currently blocking.
No, my position is that looking at the reality, looking at the figures, looking at the surroundings, looking at the fact that NATO is not ready to send troops, it's obvious that there is no victory for poor Ukrainians on the battlefield. That's my position.
So you see that there's been a lot of blood, and of course, Zelensky has not accepted that view at all, that they can't win. He's obviously animated against that. But so then that's the context, that with all that blood, and we could have shown some other video from the 27th of June where there was some like some heated public disputes among them when they were at a European Union meeting. There was December of 2023 when they were at another conference and they got into a heated argument there in front of people, et cetera. So there's a lot. So when he goes there now, then it's like, is something going to be different? And Gary, if you have, I think you say you have some breaking news, something that General Ryder is talking about right now. Is this a good spot for that?
What we continue to see on the ground is it remains a tough fight. Russia continues to attempt to take ground, but the Ukrainians have done a good job of holding the line. Again, for context, in the 7 months that we were working to get additional security assistance and supplemental funding for Ukraine, the Russians made an effort to try to push and take Ukrainian territory, and really did not accomplish that much in terms of the amount of geography that they were able to take.
Okay, that seems. I thought he was going to say something different.
I find that pretty outrageous what the general is saying. I mean, there's a horrifying situation now in Ukraine. The casualties look like Ukrainian casualties look like they're up probably to 2,000 casualties per day, almost doubled in the last few months. The idea that they are holding the line. I mean, every time you turn on the military channel, which has been a very reliable source of information, they're talking about one loss after another. So I don't know what this general is talking about. And again, I'm going to speak as several individuals of this. Speaking as an American, I am offended that this American general would be lying to the American public, which is really his objective, not just the world, and in my name. And I also have a comment about Mr. Zelensky. I'll speak as both a citizen of the world now and a person who happens to have been born a Jew. My wife is a Catholic. I don't. I don't care who you are. I take people at face value. And to bring up this memorial to this awful Holocaust that occurred in World War II, I presume Zelensky did this because he's Jewish himself. I mean, he's neglecting the fact that tens of thousands, maybe more, Jews were killed in Ukraine by many of the people who hold political views that are close to this guy Bandera, who he regularly works with. I mean, you see, when someone like Budanov is on television, he's got a nice photograph of Bandera behind him. I mean, these are people who have not, whether they're anti-Semitic or just ultra-nationalist and killing innocent people. I don't care what your problem is. If you're killing innocent people for some arbitrary reason, it's unacceptable. And for Zelensky to bring this up when Ukrainian history certainly doesn't have great episodes in its past that would make you feel good about what's happened there, is ridiculous. Now, the fact is that we can't resent people because of their history. I mean, I go to Germany. I have a daughter in Germany. I find Germany a wonderful place. I don't sit there saying to myself, well, there were Nazis there earlier. I'm aware of it. But this kind of playing unfairly with the terrible facts of history, which should be kept in mind, but the people today are not guilty for those crimes. And it's what they do now that matters. So I'm offended by Mr. Zelensky's references as well. So I think what we have now is a situation where there's a chance for stopping this bloody murdering of people, which did not have to happen if Zelensky did not walk away from a potential peace plan in March and April of 2022. And now he was under a lot of pressure, so I don't want to sit here and make believe that it was an easy thing for him to do, and he's fully responsible for it. But it's about time for people to stand up, take responsibility for what their role has been and what it is, and to stop pointing the finger and just start trying to find a solution, because every day thousands of people are being killed unnecessarily. So
well, see, that was one of the things I felt odd. In addition to what you said about General Ryder, he was also contradicting himself, because he started at the very beginning that saying, yes, the Russians are advancing all along the Eastern Front, but the Ukraine side is holding the line. Well, he can't have simultaneously holding the line and losing ground. I don't know how that works.
Well, it's I mean, he should be ashamed of himself. I'm going to say it. I mean, he should be ashamed of himself. He's a general officer. He has a responsibility to either do his job, which is not lie to the American people. If he has any integrity and he's asked to do that, he should say, no, find someone else. That's my view of his response. So I take it, when I was in the Pentagon, I worked for the Chief of Naval Operations. And I understood that in my job, the Navy would have bureaucratic interests. And I made it very clear. I was explicit. I said, if the Navy has a bureaucratic interest that is not incompatible with the best interest of the United States, I will work for it, even though I think it's mostly bureaucratic rather than driven by national imperatives. But don't ask me to lie for you. And I did several things that got the Navy some big, big capabilities and resources that really had to do with the Navy's bureaucratic interest. For example, the Navy, it was not clear whether the Navy, the Trident II, was going to get the special nuclear materials to build what's we called the heavy warhead, the 475 kiloton warhead, or whether it would go to the U.S. Air Force for the MX missile. And I was responsible for an analysis that made it impossible for the bureaucratic forces outside the Navy to reject that the Navy should get that material. So that was a service for the Navy's bureaucratic interest. However, I did it because I thought it would be best for the United States and the world to have those exceptionally threatening warheads on submarines that could not be attacked in silos, because I was really afraid that these higher yield warheads would invite an attack against American ICBMs. Now, was it a good thing that I did? I'm still not sure today, because those warheads pose a very serious short warning attack to Russia. So I'm not sitting here saying I'm a hero. I actually don't know that I did the right thing. But I do know the right thing was not to put them in ICBMs that could be attacked in a crisis. So, but, when they came to me for other things, I said, forget it. If you have an intellectually sound argument why I should do this for the country, I will do it. Otherwise, go find some clown. Don't come to me.
Yeah, and there's a whole lot of people that are falling into that category here, which is why I have some hope that Viktor Orban, who appears not to be out of that mold, may be a possibility to get to peace here. Now, I'm going to show you what he has released, and at least as of right now, when we're making this video, so far we haven't seen any official response from Zelensky. As soon as we do, we're going to get that stuff up here. But here's what Viktor Orban just hours ago released.
Magyarország adja az Európai Unió elnökségét, az Európai Tanács rotációs elnökségét 6 hónapig. Az első utam ide vezetett, mert a béke kérdése az nem csak Ukrajnának fontos, hanem egész Európának fontos. Ez a háború, amit önök most elszenvednek, az mélyen érinti az európai biztonságot. Mi nagyon értékeljük azokat a kezdeményezéseket, amiket Zelenszkij elnök úr tett a béke érdekében. Én megosztottam azt a véleményet az elnök úrral, hogy ezek a kezdeményezések, ezek hosszú időt vesznek igénybe, a nemzetközi diplomácia szabályai miatt lassúak és komplikáltak. És azt kértem az elnök úrtól, hogy fontoljuk meg, hogy nem lehetne a sorrendet megfordítani, és egy gyors tűzszünettel fölgyorsítani a béketárgyalásokat. Egy határidőhöz kötött tűzszünet, amely lehetőséget ad a béketárgyalások felgyorsítására. Ennek a lehetőségeit mértem föl, ezt tisztáztam az elnök úrral. Ezekről a tárgyalásokról természetesen az Európai Unió tanácsának, vagyis a miniszterelnököknek majd egy jelentést fogok készíteni, ami alapján megszülethetnek a szükséges európai döntések.
So I'll tell you why I'm a little more hopeful than otherwise that this might be something, because obviously Zelensky has been saying, and it did just a couple of days ago, that he's just still not even wanting to talk to Russia. In fact, if there's any Russian troops on his soil, he won't even discuss with them, which is why he had the Swiss peace conference that they weren't even invited to. So now that you have Orban here saying, first, switch the order around. First, let's get the ceasefire first, ergo with Russia being where it's at. So that's a difference right there. But also because I think that there is starting to be a growing recognition, even among some of those in the Biden administration. And we're going to talk about how he plays into this in a minute. But I think that there's starting to be a recognition that all these things can't work that we want. Russia's not going to lose. Ukraine's not going to win, that they can't push them back, that the risk of nuclear war continues to be a real possibility. And the further we strike into Russia, the higher that possibility goes. But because Biden has spent his whole 2.5 years, his whole presidency, talking about how we're going to be with Ukraine forever and no matter how long it takes and all of this kind of stuff. And in the middle of a presidential campaign, when he just had a huge setback on that debate, that he can't also say, okay, everything I've been doing with Russia, Ukraine is wrong, and we're going to reverse course. But what he can do is if Orban goes there and kind of acts as an intermediary and says, this is our idea in Europe, will you support it? Now Biden can say, oh, well, if that's what y'all want, okay. So it would be kind of a fig leaf. It would be thin, but at least there's the possibility that this could go somewhere. And the fact that Orban went there, he's taking a risk too, if that's not the case, because if there hasn't been any kind of agreement like that, and he just gets embarrassed on his first trip as president of the EU, his influence is going to be diminished. But I think that he's a smarter guy than that. And so there may be something behind the scenes to what's going on. Do I still have you, Ted?
No. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
Orban is one of the very few real leaders left in Europe. I'll be honest, I'm uncomfortable with some of his national politics, particularly some of his stands against immigration in Hungary. But that's a different discussion. He has shown leadership. He has been willing to stand up against a large array of infantilized leadership in Europe who it's hard to believe that these people can ignore Europe's own security concerns the way they have been doing, economic problems, and besides the military loss that's going on right before their eyes. But so Orban has, I give him extremely high marks for leadership here. This is not a grandstanding thing that he's doing. He's taking some political risk, and I think it's to his great credit that he is doing this. And it is a step. I hope it works out. I'm not so sure, but neither are you, of course. It is a step toward bringing this insanity closer to an end. Now, there are other things that are happening too that increase the chances that something positive might happen here. I think Marine Le Pen is very likely, if it's not a certainty, I guess, but it's very probable that she will win in France, and that she could even be the next president in France. And she has a very clear policy that the Ukraine war is a bad idea, and it would not surprise me that if that led to a lot of the support she got in this last election.
Yeah, in fact,
And
if the elections, the second round of the elections on 7 July, if they basically stayed true to form here, then her candidate for prime minister, Bardella, will almost certainly be the next prime minister. And he has categorically stated that there will be no French troops going into Ukraine to fight Russia if he is elected. So I think to your point there, that's exactly where they are.
yeah, Macron has essentially destroyed his party in the French domestic politics, just as he's destroyed France in his foreign policy. So he's doing a pretty good job, I think, in terms of bringing problems to France. And then, of course, we have this problem in the United States now, where President Biden looked really like he had lost it in this debate. And I'm again, let me first speak as an American citizen, although of course we all are citizens of the world as well. As an American citizen, I looked at this. I was horrified by this display of really a complete loss of awareness of where he was and what he was saying and doing, which it was. It was just not a gaffe at the moment. My brother was a stutterer, so I have very great sympathy for Biden, who I know had this problem of stuttering. But this was not stuttering. He really had no idea where he was.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Yeah, see, as I see it, Ted, there were two levels of problems. One is the one we just showed there, to where he literally lost his train of thought, couldn't remember what he was saying, couldn't get any of the words out, and just kind of froze up. And then there's a second problem, what I'll talk about here, and that's the substance of what he does say when he's talking even coherently. We'll talk about that one separately. But when you see this kind of thing and you're thinking about the president of the United States, what gives you real concern?
Well, having experience with someone who suffered deeply from stuttering, it looked to me like he was actually stuttering initially, and that, of course, is very, very stressing when you're out in public, and he's a politician, so he understands the implications of that. And but he let the stress. He lost his trend of thought. And what I think of as a person who has been in the Pentagon and advising a high-level military officer is I'm concerned about a political leader who can lose it that way in a highly stressful situation, because a president could readily be in a very highly stressful situation. And when I listen to the political, again, American political spinning on this, people are trying to say, well, He just, he has a great record as a president. Well, you could debate that or not. I certainly supported many of his domestic politics, but there's a lot of it I didn't support. But that's true of other presidents, Republican presidents like George H.W. Bush, who I admired greatly, even though I disagreed with him on a lot. So the fact that the president has a good record, the issue is, what is he going to be doing in the next 4 years, not what he did yesterday. The question is he going to go further downhill? Is he going to lose it in more situations than what we actually saw? And my guess is that he will, because I've heard him talk about, for example, the American situation in a way where he either has no idea what the reputation of the United States is in the real world, which is possible, which concerns me greatly since he's supposed to be the president, or he's lying about what he understands the situation to actually be, which also
Well, and
concerns me
just
greatly.
to illustrate what you're saying there, we got a perfect clip for it, which is the second issue I was talking about there, which you actually just got on. First of all, so just so everybody's tracking with you, here's the clip.
The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us. All of our allies and those who he coddles up to, from Kim Jong-un, who he sends love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Wow. Just
Well,
take
I
that
have
wherever you want to
friends.
go.
I have friends, I've been blessed with the opportunity to work with very high quality people across the world. And that includes people in China, Germany, France, South Korea, where I have a great affection for several friends there, and Russia too. And nobody trusts us. I mean, that's one of the biggest jokes in the world. I used to have this joke with a Russian friend of mine where we would argue about which of our countries was more stupid in its behavior toward the other. But nobody trusts the United States. When I go to South Korea, I just feel ashamed of my government. These people are in such a dangerous situation with the tensions between North and South Korea, and they don't trust the United States at all. Not in the least. China the same way. Russia the same way. I mean, I don't know what he's talking about, and if he believes that, then he's really out of touch, and that's another problem.
Right.
So it's true that the United States is the most powerful country in the world. That's true. We also are taking on debt at $1 trillion every 3 months. That's not small change. We also have a situation where we are very rapidly moving toward a possibility. It won't happen instantly, but where the dollar could become threatened as the currency in the world. And given that we are living on debt that we have, holding dollars and other people holding dollars, that is not a good thing for our long range future. And we have a budget that is out of control. And incidentally, I would like to be clear that Trump was more responsible for our budget being out of control from his presidency. That's been relative to Biden, but Biden has not helped. And so I don't know what he's talking about, literally. And it worries me greatly that, he appears, again, I don't know what to think. Is it just because he appears to think it, or because he actually thinks it?
Well, we've been saying Gary used to play out here a lot. This comment that that Biden made in October of last year, shortly after the terrorist event in Israel, to where Biden was asked by the interviewer, can the U.S. support both Israel at the same time it supports Ukraine? Does it have that ability? And Biden shot back with this incredulous comment that, oh, well, of course we can. We're the most powerful nation in the history of the world. So he believes it, and he really does think that. But what he fails to comprehend is apparently is that there is a balance. There's things are relative. So we are the strong. If you just said who is the strongest country in economics, military, personnel, all kinds of things, yeah, you would have to say the United States is sitting on that roll. But then there are other pillars also out there, and there are other powers that are rising, and so things are relative. And it's not. It's even the big power isn't absolute, and there are limits to power, and we're running into that, and that's where I think is the big.
We are the strongest power, the strongest country in the world, but we're facing the rest of the world these days. We are alienating the rest of the world. We are looking at what is probably an unbreakable alliance between Russia and China. The Europeans are on the ropes. Their economies are coming apart in some respects because I would like to see a well and prosperous Europe, in part because I just think it's in the interest of the whole world that these countries be prosperous and viable. And but so when Orban stands up and pushes back on the United States, which none of these other leaders seem to be able to do, I feel good about it. I mean, I used to get angry. I think I may have said this one other. I get angry at these British diplomats I talk to occasionally. Would talk about, well, we have this special relationship with the United States, and I'd always say to them, well, if you really were a friend of the United States, you'd tell us when you thought we were wrong, instead of just being a lapdog and helping us get into deeper and deeper and deeper trouble. And so I think it's a very good thing if the Europeans start pushing back, because they're in the best position to know their own best interest. And what's in their best interest is ultimately in the best interest of the United States. Having clowns just following our bad ideas and incorrect ideas is not a good outcome for the United States.
Let me ask you something, Ted. There's a couple of different factors at play. So you're talking about, and we just showed there's some of the problems with Biden, both in his cognition capacity and even when he's lucid moments about what he believes and where he's thinking about. As you see things, by all accounts, deteriorating, and these things, like you just said, they only go one way, it gets worse. It never gets better. There are two separate issues at play. One is, can he stand for re-election and serve another 4 years? That seems like beyond the question, but a lot of his party are still wanting to go that way. But then there's the second issue. Can he remain in office right now and be effective even between now and January 2025? How do you see both of those two concerns in your mind?
Well, I suspect he can continue to limp along as a president until an election occurs. But my grave concern, and it is a grave concern, is that if he is losing it, again, I think there is some reason to say, well, we have the appearance, but nothing is ever truly for sure. But if he is losing it, he would not know that he's losing it. I mean, that's the nature of this kind of terrible condition. And it looks to me like he doesn't know he's losing it. And that tends to support my concern that he is actually losing it. The other alternative is that he's so self-centered, which is possible, that he cares less about the future of our country. We just had a Supreme Court decision that suggested in an ambiguous way that Trump might not be held accountable for the illegal attempt to, overthrow the election, the last election. I mean, these guys on the Supreme Court they are not conservatives. I have many friends who are conservatives. These guys are not conservatives. These are extremist, anti-democratic autocrats. To call these guys conservatives is just wrong. That's an offense. I mean, it's an insult to real conservatives. I mean, these guys are just nuts. They're anti-democratic. And when you look at a 6-3 decision from these clowns, and they are clowns, it is the right way to describe them, in a country that has, held its democracy, however imperfect it's been, over a couple of 100 years, it is really of concern and appalling. And then to have a president who is so concerned about getting reelected that he's willing to put in jeopardy to make it possible for this total psychopath, Donald Trump, sociopath, to become the next president again. I mean, he should be falling over himself to just release his votes and let the Democrats put up an alternative candidate.
Yeah, and I guess we'll find out how that works out, and we'll certainly be watching a lot of that to see what they think, because right now everything's in their
and
power.
The people who surround him, including his wife, are doing a great disservice to the country. Whatever they think they're doing, it is a great disservice to the country. I would like to think, in fact, I know my wife would tell me, Ted, it's time.
It's funny. My wife said that exact
actually.
same thing during the debate. She said, if that was you and I was your wife, I would tell you it's time to go. So
she told me one time, it was a few years ago, she said, get off the bus. And she was right. She saved my life, actually. So, and Jill Biden is not helping the country or her husband by doing what she appears now to be doing. And all these characters around them, all they're trying to do is keep themselves in positions of authority. That's my reading of what's going on. Yeah. Anybody, if you were just a cold-blooded politician, you and I were just political figures talking about a political situation, and I had screwed up in this debate the way I had done, what I would say to you is, well, this is an unrecoverable mistake. Yes, I'm competent, but this is an unrecoverable mistake. And as a responsible politician who has responsibilities to the country and the party, but the country first, I just have to resign because, it looks so bad that it's not a recoverable political situation. So this would be an intelligent political individual who understands politics. And you just say, okay, because people want to vote against Trump. And I have created a situation, maybe by accident, where people are now doubtful they can vote for me against Trump. It's my duty to the country to turn it over to somebody else.
That's what it would seem. We'll see how that works out, because it still could. Lots of the backdoor negotiations going on right now.
Well, I hope so.
What I'd like you to do, I'd like to shift gears in the remaining time we have now, Ted, to talk about something that we thought we were going to lead with today, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to do it because the information, it's so important, I think, to get the right information out there. And we want to go back to the missile strike on Sevastopol Beach a week and a half or so ago. We've had you actually on to talk about some of that stuff before, but you've gotten additional information. And I wonder if you can share with us now kind of what you think happened during that time.
Well, I I did a Google search of the of the um, uh, of the Russian language literature because I became suspicious that the American press was not giving us an accurate picture of what happened. And it looks like what the Russian Defense Ministry is saying is that the attack came from the area around Nikolaev, which is a good deal east of Odessa. They were saying it was coming from Odessa, and the so this meant that the ATACMS missiles were overflying this beach directly north of downtown Sevastopol, and the Ministry of Defense, the Russian Ministry of Defense, also said that the attack was aimed at civilian areas in Sevastopol. Now, that suggest if that was the case, the civilian areas would have been directly south of that beach, very close to directly south. And if you intercepted several of these missiles, you would have caused them to break up. And what we saw on the beach was one of them break up over the beach and dispense its submunitions, which of course caused a tremendous number of injuries. And if you look at the second line down from this particular page, I don't know, Gary, if you can pull that up. It's the second area that's highlighted. Yeah, it says a source to security forces reported that the missiles were launched by the Ukrainian armed forces from the Nikolaev region, and work is underway to eliminate the crew. In other words, they're looking for that launch facility. So the fact that this was launched at downtown Sevastopol, and what the Russians failed to do, which they could have done, I think it would have been in their interest, in the interest of their argument, is they should have said that the trajectories of the incoming ATACMS were carrying them towards downtown Sevastopol. Another possibility is they were going further south. There's a little inlet within the harbor where the Russian fleet resides, and if your audience looks at, let's say, Kherson rather than Nikolaev, and you draw a line down to Sevastopol, you can see that it's a more north to south trajectory, especially if you're aiming at Sevastopol. And if you look at the harbor, which goes from east to west, toward the mouth of the harbor, you will see a small finger of water that goes north to south on the southern shore of the harbor. That's where the Russian fleet it resides. So if you were aiming at either the Russian fleet or the downtown Sevastopol, you would be overflying that beach. And if you were hit by an interceptor, it could well have broken up over Sevastopol or broken up over the beach and dropped pieces of the actual missile itself, causing fires or submunitions. And my guess is, if I read literally what the Russians said, I don't interpret it, I just say, this is what they meant to say, word by word, then it looks like the attack was on downtown Sevastopol. If it was against the fleet, it's even more problematic, because why would you attack these ships with submunitions? Submunition is going to hit the surface of a metal ship. It's going to make a little dent. If there are people out on the ship, of course, it'll cause injuries to people who are out in the open, but it's not going to do any significant damage to the ship. It's not going to really make the ship cause damage that's going to stop the ship from being usable. So the use of submunitions is inexcusable for all kinds of reasons, which just become more and more unreasonable when you look at the facts as best we can piece them together.
Well,
So,
yeah, then even if it was the downtown Sevastopol, I mean that's even worse because now then there's
yeah,
nothing but civilians out there, I guess.
yeah, it was just a brutal attack aimed at killing innocent civilians. And even if the Russians are killing civilians in Ukraine, which is certainly happening, though they're not trying to kill civilians, they are attacking military targets, but sometimes things do not fall exactly where they are intended. Even if that's the case, it's not a direct attack. These were not a direct attacks on civilians. And of course, that has also been going on in Donetsk, where when the Ukrainians were attacking Donetsk city with submunitions. We know that was reported.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that video.
And they were attacking Belgorod with civilian areas in Belgorod. So this is just aimed at infuriating the Russians, which is not a militarily justifiable set of actions. And what they've been trying to claim is that they're attacking military facilities that support the Russian war effort. But this is not a part of the war effort, civilians who happen to be in the downtown areas of the city. This is just aimed at spitefully killing innocent civilians. And this is the kind of behavior that is criminal. Whether, it's simply criminal. And when the government leadership in Ukraine basically allows this, they don't allow this to occur. Obviously, this is occurring because they are ordering it to occur. Because if they said you can't do this to their troops, it wouldn't happen. So I'm, I'm inclined to accept the extreme anger of the Russians with regard to. I was angry looking at this. Just when I'm angry and I see civilians killed anywhere. So the closer you look at this incident in Sevastopol, if you want to call it an incident, it was clearly intended to kill people, and it killed people on the beach instead of in downtown Sevastopol. That's all.
Yeah.
Which is also terrible.
Let me ask you another technical question related here. There was a lot of claims before this, or actually after it happened, that there was an American Global Hawk, other kinds of reconnaissance and electronic warfare drones flying around in the Black Sea area, which were allegedly used to help bring these things onto target. Can you talk a little bit about the role that any kind of U.S. Intelligence drones do play, and the fact that apparently the new Russian Minister of Defense, Belousov, has claimed that they're going to shoot down if anything further comes into the Black Sea?
Well, I don't. I haven't been able to understand the Russian argument in this incident, because if you want to find a target like the downtown Sevastopol, all you need is Google Earth or any. You don't need a drone. Now, of course, what the drone is almost certainly doing is it's collecting electronic intelligence on the air defense systems that are operating, and it's finding locations of air defense units. Anyone who has played with Google Earth or something like that knows that it's impossible to find anything by just looking. There's so much detail, there's so much stuff to confuse you. You can't do that. You have to have some queuing, and the queuing, of course, is provided by doing you have a radar operating. The radar emits a signal. You analyze the signal over time, use the different aspects of the signal as you get it over time. You eventually find a location from where the radar is operating. That gives you a coordinate, and the coordinate, you need it with enough precision so you can attack the coordinate, because if you have 200 meters precision, it's not going to be good enough. You want 50 or 100 meters or tens of meters. And that's the kind of thing that you can only do with very advanced electronic surveillance capability. And that's what those drones are doing. So in that sense, the Russians are correct. And there's no doubt that the attacks on air defense systems in Crimea, are the coordinates for those attacks are coming from those drones. No question about it.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see whether or not Russia stays good to their threat to shoot them down, or whether we risk it. I haven't seen whether there's been any since that time, but I guess it's something else we'll keep an eye on.
Yeah, those air defenses are designed from the beginning to be movable. And, but you can't, movable does not mean mobile. You probably know this better than I do, and I'm sure you do. And, so, you have to set them up. You have to measure clutter backgrounds. You have to do all kinds of stuff. And, so you're reluctant to move them, although you will, because survival is a big, not being under attack is a big incentive to move. So, but these systems are very capable, these electronic reconnaissance systems, and they can be used against you. And so, and these are expensive systems, and they're capable systems, so you want to take them out.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the Russians are very upset about these drone systems. Yes.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens, because that could cause another escalation. But so many volatile, so many moving pieces here. It's hard to keep track of it all. But as always, we're always grateful for you to come on and help provide some clarity on some of this clutter and some of this chaos that's going on the ground. But we appreciate you doing that. Thanks for coming on.
I want to emphasize again, I'm not so good at the politics, but I'm following it. So, and certainly as an American citizen, I have to say what I said. It's just appalling.
Yeah, I think you speak for a lot of people, and that's why one of the reasons we like to have you on, because a lot of people follow that. But again, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you guys joining with us as well. Ask you to like and subscribe and share this with your friends so that they have access to the same uncompromised truth that you got today. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.